Welcome back to KC Cares, Kansas City's window on the nonprofit community and the people they serve. We have the Unicorn Theater in the house, in the library.
Yeah,
this
even
is
better.
Really cool. And we have
cool.
Cynthia Levin, producing artistic director, and Ian Crawford, associate artistic director. I think the last time we were lucky enough to have you on the show, there wasn't an associate artistic director.
No, we're
so,
moving up.
Well, you're getting help, so maybe you can sleep for 15 minutes.
Maybe, we'll see. We'll see. Lofty goals.
You're like the craziest, busiest creative lady I know.
It just, sometimes you just can't stop. You just got to keep going. And I do.
And the Unicorn, you have like a big birthday.
Well,
kind of, sort of.
We're planning on a really, really big birthday in 4 years. We'll be 50. So right now we're coming up on our 46th.
But that's tremendous for an arts organization.
Not only for an arts organization, but especially for a smaller, mid-size arts organization. There are very few in the country that have lasted this long.
Well, let's go back and let's do a little history, and then of course we're going to fast forward and talk about what's going on now. Unicorn in its beginning. Share a little history of that.
Well, I did not come to the Unicorn until 4.5 years after it had started. I was not a founder. And it started in the River Key, the River Market area, 3rd and Delaware.
Which was kind of a sketchy area in its day.
It was, and for 2 years it was incredibly sketchy, and in the dark of night, everyone had to pack up and run out. It was being bombed. There were just terrible things
so if
going on
anybody's
down
lived
there.
in Kansas City, you do remember that.
You remember the 20 years that the River Market just sat vacant. That was an interesting time. But then we were at 45th and Main, and I came to the Unicorn with the move to the Norman School at 35th and Southwest Traffic Way in 1979. So it was, we were there for about 7.5 years, which was incredible, in a small grade school with that did not have a theater in it. We were just in a room. And then in 1986, we moved to where we are now, 3828 Main Street, right in the hub, in the heart of Midtown, which is fantastic.
And is booming and crazy.
It's booming now.
And all
it was a
that.
very sketchy neighborhood in 1986.
So does that have anything to do with the heart of the Unicorn?
Yes, absolutely. I have always felt that, it needs to be, we need to be in a little bit of a dangerous location, because I feel like the plays we do are just a little bit dangerous,
Or edgy, maybe.
Right. You can say controversial, provocative, edgy, dangerous, but I thought, that we need to be in Midtown. We need to be where things are happening and sort of about the stories that we perform on the stage. It just didn't seem right to be, in a shopping center in the suburbs in a parking lot. That wasn't the kind of theater, the kind of art that we did. So being right there on 38th and 39th and Main is a just terrific location. And one day there will be a streetcar, so we are ready for that too.
That's right.
Yeah.
That's right. Maybe KCIA will design that streetcar that goes to the Unicorn Theater. It'll have that artwork on it. There you go. Wouldn't that be cool?
Our artwork that Design Ranch does for us still is all over the world, because they seem to win every design award for the art that they do for our brochure year after year, which is kind of really cool. So everyone knows about the Unicorn now.
Let's enlighten people who may not know as much as they should. How would you capture your essence, and where do you fit into the big theater world that is now Kansas City?
Right, and we are certainly part of that big theater world. We have our niche, which we have always had really since the inception, which is part of our mission, to only produce contemporary plays that have never been performed in Kansas City, and most of the time anywhere in the Midwest. And very often also never performed anywhere in the world, because we do the world premieres. We've produced 68 world premieres that have never been performed anywhere. So the idea of trying to either develop work for the New American Stage or perpetuate the life of new plays. Because very often then you'll get like your first production and then nobody else does it, and then it just gets left on a table. So that the idea that new world premieres and new plays need to be done 4 or 5 times in all fairness, to get the bugs out and to get it be known throughout the rest of the country. And we now belong to an organization which I helped found 20 years ago, the National New Play Network, which is a consortium of theaters, much like the Unicorn, that are committed to the development and the production of new work. And where we started with 9 theaters 20 years ago, we're now 123 theaters strong.
Oh, that's incredible.
It's incredible. And what a great resource. Because, how do you find the playwrights? We're talking about unpublished work. And, we now have a website, and we now have all of this, a way to get the information out. And people can read plays and find plays about the sort of topics that the Unicorn is interested in. And I look for plays that are socially relevant, that have something to say, that aren't what I would necessarily call just sheer entertainment for entertainment commercial value. That we go for the story, the importance of telling story of marginalized population or underserved people, and getting that story out so that we can learn a little bit about somebody other than ourselves.
So you're the big picture person over everything. Ian, what do you do? How do you help this lady who I think doesn't sleep?
She probably doesn't. I have the good fortune of getting to help Cynthia make great art at the Unicorn, and so.
How does art get made? For the person who has very little, contact with the theater other than maybe going and being a patron, which is oh so important. Let's talk about the man behind her, the woman behind the curtain.
Well, we spend a really long time with these plays that we choose for each season. It's oftentimes, especially with the world premieres, it can be years that we spend with the playwrights developing those plays and working on them through workshops and readings until we get to present, the full production of those new plays. But even the plays that are in our season that have had productions before, we spend months and a year to months developing them with our design team, with the set designers, the costume designers who bring their artistic vision to that production, and together we create something that's really detailed and exciting for audiences, and then we get to layer in the actors and the performers and all that sort of brings the production to life. So. It takes a lot of time, a lot of deep thought and care. And that's not to mention all the other stuff that we have to do to make a theater happen. Especially, now that we own our own building, we're one of the only performing arts groups in the city to own our own building. We have to do things like call the plumber and figure out why that sink's not running, or hey, it's raining hard. There's that leak, pesky leak is coming up again. So there's a lot to just make a business happen.
Right, a 15,000 square foot building, that's 100 years old is not really an easy thing to ignore. Right. But it's sort of become part of our identity too. So we put a lot of care into what it looks like and what it feels like once you enter that building. But I think going back to the plays, that working only on new plays and contemporary plays, we really need to conceptualize every time. It's not like, well, we're doing this play and everybody knows this play and you know what it looks like. We have to create what it looks and feels like every time. And even if we're not working alongside the playwright on a possible world premiere, we usually have access to the playwright because they're usually on the younger side and they're living, and so we get to ask questions and possibly do rewrites even long after the play is published. Right. A lot of people want to go back and look at their play, and things are changing every day in our society right now. So do you want to update? Do you want to bring this into modern society? I can't believe we're doing The Doll's House Part 2. And so we all know The Doll's House. This was written 150 years ago. It was, one of the first plays about women's emancipation. And now a new young playwright has written a part 2 to Doll's House of what happens when Nora comes back home after 15 years. This is incredible because we have to look at it, where it started historically, but we have a chance to now revisit a play like that in contemporary terms. And that is so fun and so fascinating. which just sort of keeps me doing my job, year after year after year after year. Because
there's something new and exciting. And for our listeners, be sure that you go to Unicorn Theater with an RE.org. You can learn about season and everything. Give us a couple of the highlights of the upcoming season, your 46th. And then we're going to talk, you've got a big event in August.
Big bash coming up in August. That's true. And I just also have to say, one of the most incredible things that has changed over the years, where I felt like, yes, I had to be there, 24 hours a day and keep the lights on. And where we are now, where the Unicorn is now, is so different. And I have such a team behind me. I truly believe that you are only as good as the people around you, because they just, make me look better, because everyone now is there to do a job, and that's You're
not the one person putting the finger in the dike,
not at all.
so it doesn't leak.
Not at all.
I've got that with Bobby.
Yeah. See, you got one, and I got 8 or 10,
which is great. But that's 46 years. I mean, it takes a while to build that village.
It took that long to even be where we are. But that collaboration, just on that level, much less before we even get to approach a particular production and bring in a whole other team. It's really hard for me to pick out, this is my favorite, or that one's going to be my favorite, because I love all of our plays for very, very different reasons. But we're starting out the season in September with a musical, which I don't do all the time, because
Well, thank you for doing it for one of those people who
love musicals.
I do.
I know, and actually I really like them very much if we can find one that fits right the mission of the Unicorn, that has something to say. And there's this incredibly new musical. It's called Who's Your Baghdaddy? Or How I Started the Iraq War, which is a musical, at sometimes farcical musical, on the absurdity of what did start the Iraq War. I mean, how the weapons of mass destruction, it felt like a sort of a gossip chain of, hey, I saw this, and he saw that, and by the time it ends up in the hands of people who have to make a decision, it is no longer the story of what it started out to be. So that's going to be great fun. And then the Doll's House Part 2, which is really cool because Kansas City Actors Theater is doing Doll's House, the original.
Oh.
They're doing it, they're in rehearsal now, and so they're going to be performing it in August, and then we're going to come back
and give you part 2
on the backside and give everybody part 2.
And the productions are really related. They have the same director for both productions.
Oh, that's interesting.
So
same designers, many of the same designers.
Right, which is cool. So if you come to see both productions, you'll start to see sort of echoes between them and how they relate with each other, which is pretty unique. We think that there's not many times across the country that they've been able to be seen back to back like this.
Right, to use the same set designer, and so the door that Nora walks out of is going to be the same door that she walks back in, and the same costume designer. So it's going to be really fun for us and for people who see both of them to, hey, I remember that, So that's going to be really fun. But we have 7 shows. And on top of the 7 shows, we have at least 4 readings that we do of brand new manuscripts that have never been performed at all. So it does keep us busy. I mean, I just think, and several of the plays just played in New York. Bernhardt Hamlet, about Sarah Bernhardt's, when she took over a theater and performed Hamlet.
And you're directing it. Yay!
I am, because Sarah Bernhardt was actually one of the
lucky
people I
audience.
loved. Yeah,
because that doesn't happen very often. You got to have money to put on a show.
Yeah.
So you have August 3rd, the Boho Bash.
Right. So we are throwing a big party, and we hope that all of Kansas City will join us. It's going to be really fun. And this isn't going to be your typical gala. This is not like a stuffy black tie sit-down dinner thing.
Well, that wouldn't be you guys.
It wouldn't be us.
We've done that.
We have.
But,
And it wasn't us. And, we are so committed to being inclusive and including the whole community and doing art that is for the whole community. So we felt like our fundraiser should be for the whole community too. So it's going to be much more sort of like a carnival, like lots of different things to discover and explore. We're going to have a piano room, which will be really fun. There's going to be a dance party. My sister is flying in from California to read tarot, which should be pretty cool.
We've got the restaurants.
Right, and oh yeah, so we're doing tasting stations from all different restaurants from around Kansas City. So instead of sitting down and having one sort of fancy pants meal, you get to choose all different bites and flavors from around the city, which we love.
Right.
So where can folks go to find out about that? At the very least, go to the unicorntheater.org. Is there's
right
a little
on
boho
the
bash?
homepage on the website, there's a boho bash button, and you can learn more and buy tickets and join us.
Come by the theater, call the theater.
Yep.
Yeah, you bet. There's and you want to buy a ticket, you can buy a ticket to anything.
Yeah.
And then April Roy, who was our first guest, who's the Plaza Library Branch Director, is a longtime Unicorn
She is.
Theater ticket holder, so she wanted to be sure that we let you know that.
Yeah.
You guys are doing amazing work. You're also, I think, a site for Fringe.
Yeah,
That's right.
We're getting ready
So-
for Fringe. Actually, they begin next week in rehearsal, and both of our spaces, because we do have the two theaters now, and they're very, very different. So what you can perform in one would be different than what you're going to perform in the other. Yeah. But they're taking over both spaces, the main stage and our Jerome stage, and they will start performing next Friday. So that's really cool.
We love the fact that you play nice with others in the arts community.
course.
That's something that's really, I think, great and unique, is everybody's got something to offer, but I think there's mutual support and support
there
for
is.
hiring and using local talent is such a big
Absolutely,
deal, because that
absolutely.
gets harder and harder.
Right, the
as we move
cooperation
on.
between the theaters in town is really second to none. I think there's a lot of cities very envious of us because we all really get along and we share things, share people, and share resources.
Unicorn Theater, we're so glad to have you on the show, and we thank our listeners for tuning in to Casey Cares, Kansas City's nonprofit digital resource, and we're produced by Charitable Communications, generously underwritten by the Ewing Marion Kaufman Foundation. If you want to be a guest to get to our podcast, follow us on social media. It's CaseyCaresOnline.org. Thank you for listening to Casey Cares on ESPN 1510 AM and 94.5 FM.